We don't have Molly in this video, but she is in that photo on the wall behind where Erica's sitting.
Bloop boop boo. Bloop doop doo. Bloop doop da boo.
Anyway, let's talk about some television. Hey everybody, I'm Michael.
I'm Rameen.
I'm Erica.
Today we're going to chat about some TV from 1993. Before we get into too many really specific TV shows, I want to go through some events from TV in 1993. There were two different made-for-TV movies about Amy Fisher in 1993. One starring Drew Barrymore as Amy Fisher, the other starring Alyssa Milano as Amy Fisher.
Fun fact, the story also made a very brief appearance in one of the movies from 1993 that we'll be talking about, but she was definitely the in joke in the media that year. It was Addams Family Values.
Michael Jackson's Super Bowl halftime show. This was really the first Super Bowl halftime show that people actually were watching the halftime show. Usually ratings dipped, they tanked during the halftime show. So from this point on, they really made sure that they were going to get big name acts, and these were going to be big spectacles for the Super Bowl.
And ever since then, there's people that tune into the Super Bowl just for the halftime show. And the commercials.
And the commercials, yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say. Also, Michael Jackson related, there was a big publicized interview. Oprah Winfrey interviewed Michael Jackson at his Neverland Ranch. It was the most watched TV interview in US history. They talked about tabloid rumors like Michael having the elephant man's bones. They talked about cosmetic surgery and vitiligo. They talked about abuse from Michael's father. They talked about how Michael was dating Brooke Shields. And Elizabeth Taylor shows up during the interview and talks about how great Michael is.
Wasn't this like the first time he had had a media personality at Neverland to see him, or some? There was some marker like that.
Something like that. And he was notoriously private about a lot of things. Conan O'Brien was chosen as the replacement for Letterman after Letterman switched networks. Connie Chung began co-anchoring the CBS Evening News with Dan Rather. And I feel like Connie Chung is one of those personalities that I feel like was always there, but she started as an anchor in 93.
That's actually what I was going to say I felt about Conan O'Brien. I was actually surprised that he started this early.
My perspective, Rameen, on that is a little different. I was 11 years old in 1993, so for me, somehow he still feels kind of like the new kid on the block, although he's completely not. It's the same area of my brain that thinks that 2000 is somewhere in the future.
1990 was 10 years ago, obviously.
So was 2000.
The first Got Milk commercial aired on TV.
I remember this campaign so hard, only because growing up near Baltimore, we were big Orioles fans when Cal Ripken was in the Orioles. And we had a huge poster of him on one of our walls in our house that had like a measuring stick for you to like see how tall you were compared to Cal Ripken.
Aww.
And that was how we measured my height, and it said "Got Milk" on it.
Does anyone know what the first commercial was, though? Who Shot Alexander Hamilton? And the guy knows the answer, and he's eating a peanut butter sandwich, and they call him to ask him the question. I'm from a radio. Win $5,000 if you can tell us who shot Alexander Hamilton. And he's actually like night security person at a museum. It's all of the Aaron Burr memorabilia, and he can't say it because his mouth's all peanut butter. He's, oh, boo, oh, boo. And he goes to try and pour himself some milk, and he doesn't have any.
Oh, yeah. Oh, my gosh.
Do you know who directed that commercial?
I don't know, Steven Spielberg, because he did everything else.
Michael Bay. Britney Spears, Justin Timberlake, and Christina Aguilera joined the cast of the Mickey Mouse Club.
Let it be known that this was the year it began.
1993 was also the year that the Food Network debuted. If I'm in a house with cable and bored, that's what I go to, Food Network.
It's one of the few stations I think that hasn't gone to all reality TV.
The 90s were wild, man.
Well, ain't that cute? But it's wrong! Brad Garrett was the voice of the big dog. I think the idea of the show was that it was Ren and Stimpy-ish, but much less gross, but like zany still.
So that is actually a pattern that going later into other shows too, I was going to talk about. It seems like ever since Ren and Stimpy opened that Pandora's box, there are now these tiers of Ren and Stimpiness shows in kids' TVs that like, well, maybe we're not as bad as Ren and Stimpy, but you know, we kind of toe that line too. We look like Ren and Stimpy, but we're not that bad. It's weird that there's quite a few. So this exists in a similar part of my brain to like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and the Pokemon show because I was like just the right age demographic to enjoy it, but that age demographic is so young that most of us don't remember much of it. I think I was 5 or something when I watched Sonic. Same with Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
I remember seeing an ad for it that it was coming to Saturday morning cartoons, and it was on at like 7 or 8 in the morning on Saturday. I never had a Sega. I was not that into Sonic as a game, but I remember liking the character a lot for some reason. So I told myself, I'm going to get up early and watch this on Saturday morning. I did maybe once, but the voice of Sonic in this is Jaleel White, Steve Urkel.
That poor guy should have had a hella career. He was really ridiculously talented, but because he was so pigeonholed into that one character, we'll just never see the greatness that he could have been.
I think he has done a lot of voice acting, though.
I didn't actually like Animaniacs much when it came out when I was a kid. I think a lot of the humor probably went over my young head, but like looking back at it now when I look at clips and stuff, like first of all, the lyric writing team and songwriting team on that show, like Chef's Kiss, great soundtrack, excellent job. It's just a really clever, well-written kids show that you don't get as much of that kind of tongue-in-cheek thing in kids shows anymore in a way that keeps them within the boundaries of a certain age demographic.
Molly wanted to join us today, but she's very sick, so she's unable to join us. But she did want to say about Animaniacs that it's sort of the last of the animated comedy sketch shows for children. From this point on, it really does go into full stories for an episode. This is me building on Molly's idea now that there's something you can sort of experiment more when you have a sketch show style like this. There were so many things that they did on this show, but then to build on what Rameen was saying with the things you can get away with, whenever Yakko looks at the camera and says, "Good night, everybody," or "Good night, folks," or whatever he says, that's because they just made a joke that is actually pretty blue, pretty off color. And they were afraid every time they made one of those jokes that they would get canceled. And so "Good night, everybody" is like, this might be our last episode. The long sort of off color jokes. My favorite one. They're trying to solve a mystery at some point, and Yakko says to Wacko and Dot, "Everybody dust for Prince." And then Dot says, "I found Prince." And she's holding the musician Prince in her arms. And and then Yakko says, "No, no, fingerprints." And then Prince looks at her like, some of these jokes are made to go over kids' heads. There's so many great things that come from Animaniacs. Obviously, Pinky and the Brain is the first that comes to many people's mind. I also always loved Slappy Squirrel. That has my favorite new adaptation of the Who's on First joke. So Slappy and it's like her nephew, who's the little annoying squirrel, are at Woodstock on a tree looking down at the stage. And the joke is who's on stage. What Rameen was saying about the songwriting, there's the Countries of the World song that Yakko sings in one episode.
Rob Paulson is the name of that actor, and
Thank you.
he is arguably one of the most accomplished voice actors in all of animated history. This guy is so generous with his time for up and coming actors, performers. I think that is actually the case with a lot of the voices and the talent on this particular cartoon, because Animaniacs is so loved and so well known. But a lot of them, like a lot of those actors, have worked on The Simpsons and some of these other long running shows. And Steven Spielberg was the director. They're all very nurturing to like the next generation, and I think you feel that in the show as well. This show wasn't exactly targeted to my age range, so I never got into it as a kid either. I really do mean to keep watching it as an adult because it was so intelligent, it was so well made, and one of the last of this kind of style of sketch comedy that I love.
Yeah, I was never a big Beavis and Butt-Head fan at all. I just sort of didn't get it. Like, why are we watching these two, like, doofuses?
I actually was for like a year of my life. I don't remember how old I was. I was like between 10 and 13 when you like snuck downstairs to watch the TV that mom and dad didn't want you to watch. And this was one of those shows for me. Looking back at it when I've tried to rewatch it, I'm like, oh God, this is
Yeah.
stupid, like awful. And I don't see why anyone would enjoy this, but I did just because I was like, they said, damn.
And looking back now on what I remember of it, I did watch it somewhat regularly for a while. And I remember being grossed out but hooked at the same time, just like you. We didn't see a lot like that for like 16-year-old guys. There wasn't a lot of TV necessarily targeted to them and their lifestyle. A lot of it was like action and violence and crap like that. There wasn't a lot of like teenage boys just talking like teenage boys do. The closest you got was like Zach Morris, you know? I can appreciate that side of it, but then, 16-year-olds are gross. So
Mm.
that's the trade-off.
But there was one really good thing that did come from Beavis and Butthead, Daria, because she was originally a
Oh,
side character on
yeah.
Beavis and Butthead, and then she got her own show, which is excellent, but that's a ways off still.
Bill Nye the Science Guy.
Bill.
I never watched a lot of it, but I really, really respect him and everything he stands for on the show and just as a person generally.
Are you kidding? This was like every movie day when science teacher needed a movie day in middle school and late elementary school too, I think. I loved Bill Nye the Science Guy. I was thinking about this as I was looking at this list. On the one hand, the emphasis in TV in this era was like educational, which was really cool because you got shows that managed to make learning fun like this. But then on the other hand, there was a lot of censorship.
I'm super impressed every time I hear that man speak. He's just so passionate about science and education and doing the right thing on this planet. And he's one of these celebrities that's definitely pushing back against everything anti-climate.
So this is one that I watched with my mom a lot because it was one of those things that was like it was on during dinner or something like that, and my mom really liked it. Doctor moves to small town somewhere in the old west, and it's a woman doctor, and the small town doesn't trust a woman doctor, and there's also like Native American relations that are occasionally sour, and it's really interesting. Like I remember learning what a mastectomy was from that show because one of the women main characters has breast cancer and Dr. Quinn has to perform a double mastectomy on her. I don't know how good it was because this is me as, like an 8, 9, 10-year-old watching this show and only remembering it now. But things like that stuck out in the show. Oh, baby, I hear the blues are calling, tossed salads and scrambled eggs.
I'm so sorry because I'm sure someone loves Frasier. I find it so dull. I find it some of the like most boring television, at least comedy television that I've ever watched.
I like Frasier well enough. Kelsey Grammer's character of Frasier is the worst. I mean, this is a spin-off of Cheers. He's playing the same character from Cheers that he plays on his own show. But I think what makes the show is all the side characters. David Hyde Pierce is amazing and always good in everything he does. And he's the best part of the show. I think there's good stuff in the show, but I would never say it's one of my favorites or anything like that.
This is one of the more solid casts in TV history. As an ensemble, they work incredibly well together. I've often thought I would like to go back and see it. It's supposed to be an intelligent script, so I would like to see some of that, but it might be a little too dated for my reference at this point. Oh my God, I would still watch this. Legends of the Hidden Temple is just one of these fantastic, larger than life kids game shows that you go through all these different obstacles. You're following a story. It's based in real history and archaeology. The host was fantastic, and it gave so many kids a chance because it started with something like 6 pairs of kids that gradually got whittled down to just one who did this huge, epic obstacle course. And oh my God, I can't tell you how much I wanted to be on that show when I was a kid.
I only really remember the obstacle course.
Oh, it was great. The first one was an elimination round where they went from 6 teams down to 3. That was trivia questions. And then there was a small sort of game challenge that narrowed it down a bit more. And I think there was a third thing somewhere in there. And then it was the big final.
You had to like raft across a river, I remember. And there was, the trivia was like the first thing. And there was like, my big memory was the trees that would grab you if you like tried to get the key out of the wrong tree or whatever it was.
It was in the big house, and the guys, I forget what they called them, but there was like one in almost every room. And if you did the wrong thing in that room, they would come out and remove you from the scenario. And your teammate had to take over at that point to try to find the treasure and get back safely. And they would look for all these really cool, real sounding historic artifacts. Like the one I remember most was when they were looking for Amelia Earhart's little pig statue that it was rumored she had with her for good luck, and somebody found it, and it was hidden in the hidden temple, and they had to go in and find it. And that guy who hosted it was a really good host, really engaging, not over the top.
What team would you have wanted to be on?
Purple, duh. And they never won. The purple team almost never ever won. It was almost always the red team.
It's purple parrots. Green monkeys was my team that I wanted to be on. Orange iguanas.
The
The
red
red jaguars, the
Jaguar.
silver snakes, and the blue
Yep.
barracudas.
They did all of this without flashy CGI. And that, I think, in a way similar to like early Star Trek or Star Wars, that's part of the charm of the media is that they managed to make it so engaging and feel risky even without big special effects to make it look realistic or whatever. Like you knew the kids weren't gonna die when the little panel flipped them around to the other side of, the studio set or whatever.
and they
But
fell on the foam blocks or whatever.
yeah, but it was still like, oh God.
Starring Terry Hatcher as Lois and starring vocal Trump supporter and NRA board member Dean Cain.
That sucks because I remember, even though I was 5 and never watched this, I remember a little 5 or 6 or whatever me, when the first commercial I saw for that, I looked at that man and I was like, huh. This show created who I am. You know how you had that 1 or 2 shows you obsessively watched when you were a certain age, and because of the age at which you watched it and how often you watched it, it just sort of is cemented in your brain? That's Mighty Morphin Power Rangers for me. I'm 80% sure that my favorite color is green because the Green Ranger made little 6-year-old me go, huh. But this show, like, had it all. Giant dinosaur robots with lasers. People doing martial arts in spandex.
Amy Jo Johnson.
Amy Jo Johnson, exactly.
Yeah.
An old Remichael video reference, as well as a renowned actress and songwriter and artist.
I was never super into Power Rangers, but I didn't have a problem with them. But the neighbor kid who I hung out with was really into Power Rangers. And about the time that he was getting extra into Power Rangers, I was getting extra into music and I was starting to like play music when we were hanging out. And he's like, I hate all music except for the Power Rangers theme. So he taped it on a little Walkman off the TV and would just like play this while we were running around outside. And I'm just like, I need to not be around anything Power Rangers related.
All I'll say is, Mom, if you're watching this, and I hope you are not, thank you for taking me to the Power Rangers live show and buying me the Power Rangers lightsaber many times, because I'm sure I broke it more than twice. Thank you for the Green Ranger dolls, because you know what? That show probably sucked for you as an adult.
I was going to ask you who your crush was, but you spared me that
Green
question.
Ranger.
So
Yeah, the Green
yeah,
Ranger.
But
the Red Ranger was my
oh, I
man.
mean, you also like wanted to be the Yellow Ranger, right? Was that it?
Yeah. Well, I was at
Oh,
first
poor.
always the Pink Ranger with my friends, and then later became the Yellow Ranger, and then eventually stopped playing Power Rangers because those kids were kind of douchebags.
And we were 18.
I'm going to say something, and I don't know if I've ever said this out loud, so I'm just going to say it to put it into reality on the internet. This show really hit its popular stride when I was in about 6th grade, but in about 3rd grade, I actually wrote this story. I'm sure a lot of creative people and especially writers have a similar experience, but I am telling you, I wrote a story that is almost exactly the Power Rangers. And I still am a little offended that they stole my story from me. And I'm like, clearly, it's not the way it happened. But I just want to say for the record, I wrote the Power Rangers.
Did anyone watch this? Because I certainly did.
My only exposure to it, because it was way above my head when it came out, is watching like reels of it and clips of it now, because they're all over the internet. And I gotta say, like, it's some good comic writing and acting. Like, it's entertaining. I don't know that I would really want to sit through multiple episodes, but it's definitely a nice, like, Thursday night TV before bed kind of thing.
Fran Drescher is a blessing. During the Screen Actors Guild strike, did you see any interviews with her? Because she's the president of the Screen Actors Guild now. She is so smart. And I'm so used to seeing her play vapid characters because that's her type that she played, and her voice is sort of naturally like Nanny Fine's voice on The Nanny. She's playing it up. It's not that much, but her voice is kind of like that, so she kind of gets typecast in those roles a lot, but she is so smart and so engaging and warm and sincere. After hearing some interviews with her on NPR during the strike, I have even more respect for her than I already did. But I also want to talk about the theme song, sung by Anne Hampton Callaway, who's a fantastic jazz singer. I have some recordings of her singing some other stuff that I really like. But I didn't know that she also wrote the song. I thought she was just the singer, but she also wrote the Nanny theme song and sang it herself.
Okay, so you know how before I was talking about the tiers of Ren and Stimpydom? If Ren and Stimpy is like, the top of the Ren and Stimpy scale, then Rocko's Modern Life is like here, usually here, sometimes,
Are you rating quality of the show overall, or are you rating grossness?
like the pure vulgar Ren and Stimpiness. Like this
Okay.
is as nasty Ren and Stimpy as possible, and this is like, I don't know, I Love Lucy, something really tame but funny.
Okay.
Rocko's Modern Life, in terms of like the nasty, is like right here.
Gotcha.
It's not questionable for children, but it's certainly not like, oh wow, this is benefiting me to watch, I enjoyed it when I was that age. I don't now.
I knew Saved by the Bell, the college years existed. I didn't know that the new class existed. I mean, it makes sense. They went to college in the college years, and then a new class came in the new class. I didn't know that the new class existed.
It only existed because Dustin Diamond and whoever played the principal, I forget his name, this was their only career, so they needed more to do, and the network was trying to monetize off them. I never watched it. The college years was on in syndication in the same time block as the original OG Saved by the Bell. They just kept it in that chronological order for those actors. If you kind of watched it on repeat like I did, then you kind of got disappointed when it got to their high school graduation because you knew you were in for the college years for another few months after that. It was like, I gotta find something else to watch in the afternoon. It just didn't have the magic that the original did.
I really like Deep Space Nine a lot. It's just got some of the most underrated performances in the series. Cisco, his actor is so good.
I have mixed feelings on that actor. I liked
From the
Kira
woman
and
with the
Dax a
short.
lot.
Yeah, I love Dax. Just the versatility she had to have in that role. And I thought some of the storylines were really interesting too, like the ways they had to handle diplomacy, intersecting with things like religion. Many other times in the series that have tackled religion haven't really gone in as depth of the social hierarchy of it.
Got
Yeah,
the
I
evil
really like
space
this
pope
one.
lady. Yeah. I actually think the storylines on Deep Space Nine are among the best. I think the political nature of the show is so interesting, but I hate how Ferengi centric it is. Any show that is Quark, yeah, that Quark is the lead in an episode, cannot watch it, cannot stand their voices. Also, I can't think of the name of the actor who played Cisco either. I think he's very talented, but I think sometimes he took an episode like he was performing in King Lear to a giant audience in a theater, and it's like, no, the camera's right here. Like, you don't need to play to the family circle. Like, sometimes he's a little bit too big, and you can tell he has serious stage actor chops.
But I think it wasn't always that way. Like that first episode where the camera closes in on him when he's like reunited with his wife, the tension that's built over the episode of knowing what that loss means to him and the way he played it. I've gotten feels in Star Trek before, but never in the first major, I mean, it was a two-part episode, I think, but the first episode's conclusion.
I never watched the show, but we all heard our share of Chuck Norris jokes. And like Dean Cain, Chuck Norris is an incredibly far right, very openly conservative person. I don't know if you remember this, Rameen, but before you moved to Texas, we were hanging out one evening and you just made like an offhand comment that I thought was so funny that instead of telling Chuck Norris jokes, we should tell the same jokes but make them Julie Andrews jokes. My mom liked this show, and I was afraid of the opening credits, so I could never watch it. My old roommate Bob was into it, and I watched some with him. I think it's actually a very good show, and I like having a believer and a skeptic as the two leads. Gillian Anderson is a fantastic actor, and I will watch her do anything. And I think it's a legitimately good show, especially for how goofy it can be sometimes. It's like the sci-fi show that has serious themes, but also is so goofy at the same time. But the X-Files is on the more serious side, a little on the more people die side. What do you think of all these shows? Is there anything that you particularly want to chat with us about? Let us know in the comments. I'd love to read your comments on any of this and have discussions with you. Give this video a like while you're there and subscribe to our channel. We talk mostly about music and video games, but we also talk a little bit about TV and movies. If you're interested only in music or video games or anything else, look through the playlists because there's probably a playlist for that. The two of you are going to try your best to pick out the top 10 most watched TV shows according to the Nielsen ratings in 1993. Now, this is the 1993-1994 list since the Nielsen ratings go by seasons, but we only are talking about shows that started in 1993 to the best of my knowledge. I might have mixed up a few of these. Those black bars in the second half of the list are for shows we did not discuss. Only numbers in the top 10 will count as being correct. Everything else will count as an error, but I'll show you anything 11 through 20 that you guessed. We are not counting points this time, so you are collaborating on this. So go ahead and discuss amongst each other, but each of you individually are still making guesses. So if there's something that like you disagree on what you think is up there, that could be one of your guesses and not the other person's. Once you are both out of guesses, then we'll say that we're finished. Hopefully you'll have gotten the top 10 by then.
So let's talk trends, because we've been at this rodeo more than once, darling.
Yes, yeah.
I'm trying to think back now. Is it usually like the adult weeknight, primetime hour that gets the top 10? Is it more the kids' shows? I'm trying to remember.
Definitely not the kids' shows. I'm definitely leaning primetime, not to exclude news programs, because I feel pretty strongly that 2020 is probably on that list.
Yeah, I seem to remember 2020 does well every year. Big name news like 2020 is probably going to be up there.
Okay. I'm going to take a guess with my first instinct, which was 2020.
2020 was number 15. Still top 20, so that's a good instinct that it was watched a lot.
I'm going to go with what I think was in its heyday at this time and was watched at like the primetime hour. Seinfeld.
Seinfeld was number 3.
Ooh, okay.
We're going for watches, not for quality. So with that in mind, Roseanne.
Roseanne was number 4.
Okay. So we're seeing the trend, darling. And apparently it was not the news. I forgot about this one. And I remember when you sent the list out earlier, I was looking at the list of Nielsen rating shows, and I didn't look anything up, but just thinking to myself in advance, like, what was popular? I remember seeing this one. It's easy to miss because it's in F, and there aren't many Fs. Full House.
Full House.
You tried to hide it.
The alphabet tried to hide it, darling.
That's handed, darling. No!
Aww.
Darling.
I feel like Home Improvement was still doing well at this time.
Final answer?
Not now that you ask me that.
Oh, sorry. Didn't mean to sway you in one way or another.
Uh-huh. No, it's not my final answer. Wait, what is CBS Sunday Movie? We didn't talk about movies.
We did it for a previous year. That before you could rent movies and before rentals got super popular, CBS played a Sunday movie. It was on the list for one of the prior years because they played the first Batman movie on it, and like everyone in America tuned into it.
All right, shifting gears then. 60 Minutes.
60 Minutes was number 1.
Woohoo!
Okay.
See, I was right about the news thing. I just got the wrong show.
I'm torn between the X-Files, NYPD Blue, Lois and Clark, although something tells me no on Lois and Clark. I feel like that didn't last very long. It wasn't really a big hit they wanted it to be. I'm gonna say Home Improvement.
Home Improvement. It's number 2.
Yes.
Michael!
I seriously didn't mean to try and I was not trying to sway you away from that when you said that.
I'm thinking about a risk I really want to take. Like something in me is telling me to say Saved by the Bell, the college years. Only because that is the kind of thing that like everybody who ever loved Saved by the Bell would have turned out for that first, at least the first episode, and possibly more thereafter. I don't like the look Michael's giving me.
How many people loved Saved by the Bell? Was Saved by the Bell ever on the Nielsen ratings for any of the previous years?
The shade, Michael.
I'm trying to help. I'm trying to help.
Okay. Lois and Clark.
Lois and Clark.
I don't know. I don't know.
Nope.
No.
Fuck.
See, it was like billed as this big hit, but I have a feeling if I go back and look, it probably only lasted a season or two. Oh God. We should go back and count how many times I've said, oh God.
Maybe I can do that in the editing.
Oh God, oh God, oh God. There.
Don't do this to me.
Something in me, and this is not yet my answer. I want to ask Eric about this. Something in me says Boy Meets World.
I was thinking that too, because that was the other one that it was like, this premiered this year. Would it have been a big hit right off the bat, or did it need to warm up? Because the nanny needed to warm up, I think.
And the nanny also, I don't think really lasted as long. If I
No.
remember correctly, and I don't think we ever said this, but I'm pretty sure Boy Meets World had like 5+ seasons, something.
Yeah, it ran a while.
You know what? We're both leaning in that direction. I'm gonna say Boy Meets World.
And also a no.
Damn.
You know what? Murphy Brown has been on the list before and it isn't over yet. So let's say Murphy Brown.
Murphy Brown was number 9.
Yay.
Oh, well done, Erica. I'm trying to remember in a previous year, Erica. This is a question for you, not Michael, because I think would be TMI. But wasn't Coach on a previous year's list?
Yeah.
Okay, and I'm pretty sure Coach was not on the list of stuff that ended, so I'm gonna go with Coach.
Coach was number 6.
Mm-hmm. People love them a sports ball and stuff that makes them cry. Well, at least we got more than half of the list. I can die happy.
Rameen, Star Trek was trucking right along. I feel like Deep Space Nine would have been one that people tuned into a lot, at least for the start. It was in a prime spot.
I was thinking that one, but my hesitation is that even though Star Trek is very popular, it's
already very niche.
Exactly. It's popular for a specific demographic. I'm trying to remember too. Wasn't Murder, She Wrote on the list previously?
Yes.
Yeah. I don't know. Let's say The Nanny.
Nanny was not on this list. Erica is out.
No.
But you can still discuss with Rameen. The ghost of Erica discussing with Rameen.
Don't pick Northern Exposure.
Okay, I'm torn, Erica. I'm torn. Help me. Obi-Wan, Erica, you're my only hope. I'm torn between Murder, She Wrote and Star Trek.
Murder, She Wrote.
Okay, you heard
Between
the ghost
those,
lady, Michael.
Yeah.
Murder, She Wrote.
Danger Girl.
What's number?
No!
Oh,
no.
Sorry. No, I'm wrong. I hit the wrong one. It was 11. So you're out. So
I'm sorry.
Fill out the rest of the list for
twist
you.
The knife.
Number 10 was CBS Sunday Movie. Number 8 was Monday Night Football. Number 7 was Frasier.
You know, I knew it.
And number 5 was Grace Under Fire. Any observations either of what's popular or of what's new or what we were talking about? General trends for 1993 that you're seeing?
A lot of everyman representation.
Yeah. I would say that Frasier is not everyman.
But Murder, She Wrote was just for an older demographic.
Mm-hmm.
Also, kind of unremarkable, like remarkable in its unremarkableness. Is that a word? It's continuing a lot of the same trends of previous years, even though many of the shows listed here are kind of sort of new and different concepts, like The Nanny, for example.
actually new shows or just new concepts, we've got Grace Under Fire's actual new show. Frasier is an actual new show, and it's a fairly new concept. NYPD Blue was a new show. A lot of what's left are the new shows, but of those, the ones that are sort of new concepts, I think The Nanny definitely feels like a new concept. I'm gonna uncross it so we can see it. Lois and Clark is actually a pretty interesting concept for a show.
Mm-hmm.
Was like the first of those like serious superhero shows, not the campy like Batman style.
Right, and it wasn't as much about the superpowers and whatnot. It was more about the interpersonal relationships.
And it was also one of the first sort of superhero forays that wasn't geared toward kids. This was 100% for the adults and adult relationships. So
yeah. Well, this has been fun. So thanks everybody for watching. If you want to check out another video, check out this one up here, and if you want to watch if you want to watch more videos like this, check out this playlist of them down here. That should be about it. Maintain your groovy selves.